Hey everyone, what's going on? If you're new to this channel, what I talk about is signs, symbols, letters, numbers, and if you understand some esoteric knowledge practices such as gematria, which is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, you will start to see that there are patterns that exist everywhere in this world. And oftentimes we connect it to an elitist cabal that is using this knowledge to rule over us. And I do agree that this is going on, but there's certain things about it that I just cannot wrap my brain around. And, I see these patterns exist everywhere, every single day. A lot of people think that the organic matrix is something that just happens every now and then, but in reality, if you pay enough attention, these things happen every single day, all of the time. And with that being said, I want to that's what a lot of this video is going to be about. I want to show these patterns that exist within my own life and patterns that exist within others' lives. And, it is interesting how they are connected. Some of the stuff is connected to the same thing as the cabal and so on. But there's just some things I can't wrap my brain around. I've been asking some of these questions for a number of years now, such as like, if the cabal is using this knowledge to rule the minds of the masses and they can make the 113th pitch in the Steve Bartman game hit to the seat where Steve Bartman's hitting in seat 113, or they can make Mike Moustakas hit his fourth postseason home run in the fourth inning, giving the Royals 4 runs at exactly 4:44 p.m. If they can do all of these things and whatever else, why do they need to create a surveillance state and create more surveillance and everything else in the world? Why do they, make us think that they want to give us a vaccine to either, put a chip in us or this or that, right? Why would they even need to do all of this if they can already control the majority of the world and so on? Why can't they stop a movie like Zeitgeist from going, somewhat viral and getting out there? Why can't they stop this movie, from being released if they truly didn't want anybody to know about this knowledge? And if you've been following me for over the years, in 2016, there was an obvious cabal that was doing these things to us, and we ended up learning reverse gematria out of it, or we really learned the worth of the reverse gematria. And some guy started mocking my blog, and his name was James Jumper, and he referred to me as my name in reverse, Nad, and this was before we really even knew the worth of reverse gematria. And his name just so happens to equal the same as reverse gematria. 166 was the big number I talked about, and James Jumper equals 166, and in reverse gematria. And right around this time, my Uncle Barney had died, and my Uncle Barney's name equaled 166, and he was married to Betty that was synced up to the Flintstones, and the Flintstones aired 166 episodes and a whole lot more. And I'm just bringing this up because it just seems that by doing this, they wanted us to learn about the reverse gematria, right? They knew that we were going to learn about the reverse method. And while it seems like they were doing a bad thing, in fact, they were actually teaching us something, right? And maybe this isn't always the case with what the cabal is doing, but it is proof that there is some type of cabal or something, some type of people who understand this knowledge and know it exists and are kind of guiding us, even though we think that it's a bad thing, right? So, I mean, there's just things I can't wrap my head around, And even things such as 9/11, it seems that they created 9/11 to, you know, create a culture of conspiracy theorists, right? And, maybe that's because they did this because this way they can control the way that people understand conspiracy, and even the way that we learned about Event 201 this year, right? Event 201 and how it's synced up to the Jesuits. It just seems so interesting, because Zach was in Louisiana, and Louisiana equals 201, and the Francis Bacon gematrias that I've been talking about a whole lot being really important. And he just happened to be staying in room 201, and then this guy named Dr. Paul Cottrell kept reaching out to him, trying to, look at Dr. Paul. Maybe it's another T. Yes, it is, but this guy kept reaching out to him, trying to tell him about Event 201, and then after that, it really set off that there was this big idea with the Jesuits and so on. And what I often wonder is sometimes if they're perfectly placing stories and they're manipulating this own truth community to help manifest the ideas that they want us to think of, right? And I think that while the Jesuits are very important, and I think that the Jesuits do play a big role in understanding this knowledge and what is going on in the world, I think that the overall thing is so much bigger than the Jesuits, and I think they want us to think and see the connection to the Jesuits. They're guiding us to understand this, and that's why they created so many stories after this in the media that are all connected to the Jesuits, right? And it seems like they almost did this on purpose because they knew that somehow the gematria community would see this and kind of manifest these ideas and manifest things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be directed to the Jesuits, but they could have been doing this for years, right? And they they knew that we understood certain patterns by connecting it to a certain thing. So then they keep on doing these patterns, and then maybe we are actually helping them in manifesting things that they want to happen. I hope that makes sense. And like I said, I'm not, I don't know. I feel like sometimes people make me want to feel guilty for having questions, right? But I don't fully understand the whole purpose of all of this, and I have a lot of questions. And all I'm doing is asking questions because I've been asking these same questions, this is a blog post from 2016, November 18th of 2016, and I'm asking these same questions. And it's like I'm still asking these questions, and they're not being answered. So I'm trying to get to the bigger root of the problem and trying to understand more of what this world really is, right? And I'm not saying anybody's wrong or bad or whatever, but there's so many questions that I have that don't make sense with the way that we're kind of viewing gematria, and I'm not saying that anybody's wrong or right because I don't know for sure, but there's just so many things. And when I see these patterns every single day in my own life, it's so confusing. And what's really interesting though is that a lot of these patterns often connect to the Jesuits, or it's just been that way. And when my Uncle Barney died in 2017, I really do question if he got murdered by the Jesuits. I'm not going to lie. I think that he possibly got murdered by the Jesuits. He was a fourth degree Knight of Columbus, and he got in a mysterious car crash that makes absolutely no sense. Driving 5 miles in the wrong direction out on a gravel road and then getting in a car wreck, and they got to ping his cell phone to find him, and then he dies at the Jesuit hospital the next day. And I get a letter in the mail with $300 in it that very same day that was express shipped, and telling me not to, do this knowledge anymore, basically, and just believe in God. And just before that, YouTube had changed my banner on my Facebook of the Last Supper, or it was Slipknot at the Last Supper, which is interesting in regards to Slipknot having the song Gematria, the killing name. And, I talked a whole bunch about how it was connected to Fred Flintstone and how my cousin was Fred Flintstone at Halloween one year. And I went to the bar with him and I was dressed as Jesus, and talked about how his brother Ryan lived near Miami, Florida, and it was all synced up to my uncle giving me this Miami Dolphins jersey before he died, a Dan Marino jersey. And I pointed out how my cousin lived near Fort Lauderdale, or near, which is in the Miami area, and we was this big connection with the Miami Dolphins back then. And then the very next day, we had a Fort Lauderdale airport shooting, and then I talked about how it was connected to the key of David and Jesus supposedly having the key of David. And then the very next day after that, the ex-Atlanta Falcons player named Keon Carpenter died. Think about Jesus, the supposed carpenter, right? Jesus the carpenter, Keon Carpenter. Also, in relation to that Dan Marino jersey, there was something that was synced up to The Simpsons at the time, and it was the number 1012. So I looked up The Simpsons season 10, episode 12, and it just so happened to be the only episode with Dan Marino in it. And then that episode, the Falcons either win or lose the Super Bowl 33, the Atlanta Falcons, right? And then my uncle, when the place that he died was just before the town, Otobo, Iowa, that the mascot of the school is a falcon. And then the Falcons go on to the Super Bowl and so on, and they blow the 25-point lead on 2-5, and Falcons equal 25 and a whole lot more, right? And I guess I'm bringing all this up because on 2/11 that year, the day just after the Super Bowl, I was at my grandma's house, and my grandma's been in poor health for a long time, or she was at the time. And my uncle Clancy was there, and my sister was there. And that day, I found out that my uncle actually didn't die from cancer. He died from injuries sustained from his car wreck. He had bleeding on the brain, apparently. That's what the autopsy said. And my uncle Clancy told me that, and I thought, man, that is so weird. And because I thought maybe he might have had a stroke or something of the sort that would have made him drive off the main highway and, go out on a gravel road. And, that would maybe make a little bit of sense as to why he would do this. But the reason that he had bleeding on the brain from the car wreck that makes, and then he dies at the Jesuit hospital. But that same day, I found out that my sister lives on Falcon Avenue. I never knew the exact address of where she lived. I just knew she lived in Audubon, Iowa. And she lived on Falcon Avenue. And I was like, that's pretty interesting because, the Falcons were just in the Super Bowl, synced up to Barney and so on. And that same day, I was also thinking about the Philadelphia Eagles because my uncle Clancy, his son Ryan, who I talked about, who lived near Fort Lauderdale, he was the only Philadelphia Eagles fan that I knew. And my grandma just so happened to live on Eagle Street. And a few months later, I found out that my sister owns a company. The company that they own, it's like this poop scooping business or whatever. If they like get manure and then they resell it. I don't exactly know what they do, but it's something to do with reselling like the manure as fertilizer and so on. And that company just happens to be called Eagle Acres. And I was like, what are the odds of this, right? Eagle Street. And then I'm talking about my uncle Clancy, whose son Ryan is the only Eagles fan I know. And then my sister owns a company called Eagle Acres. So I started, paying attention, thinking maybe the Philadelphia Eagles would be important. And then, my grandma ends up dying 250. I'll type it out here. I can't even remember. Philadelphia Eagles. My grandma ends up dying, or Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yeah, equals 253. And my grandma died 253 days after my uncle Barney that year. And my sister's name, Michelle Hansen, equals 128. And in Jewish gematria, eagles equal 128. And then my grandma ended up dying 1 month and 28 days after. I'm trying to think here. Or she died 128 days after her birthday, right? 128. And just before that, my neighbor and my grandma's neighbor, we all lived in like a little. I basically lived right behind my grandma. And then my neighbor to the right of me also lived right behind my grandma. And he so happened to die 128 days after his birthday and 1 month and 28 days before the Jesuit anniversary. And, I just started thinking how interesting, right? And then my grandma died on 9/24, the day after Donald Trump called out the kneeling in the NFL that was synced up to the Philadelphia Eagles and the flag being sewn at 239 Arch Street in Philadelphia. So I knew there was some type of narrative to it. And that was also the same day as Nicholas Cruz's birthday. And, Nicholas Cruz is the guy who supposedly did the the Stoneman Douglas shooting that was all about the number 19. And my grandma died exactly 19 weeks before the Super Bowl that year. And Nicholas Cruz was born 19 weeks after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas died, and a whole lot more, But it's the 19th prime of 67, and Valentine's equals 67, and the Eastern Orthodox Valentine's is on 6/7, and much, much more, But all year that year, I was talking about the Jesuits and how they were important to this father symbolism, and just a whole lot of stuff going on with it. But I had synchronicity with my TV and child molesting priests. And when I was a kid, there was a priest named Father Howard Fitzgerald who possibly molested me when I was a kid. I'm not for sure if I blacked it out or what, but there's a lot of weird signs and moral of the story, he got kicked out of the church after 35 years in 2014, and the word Catholic equals 35, and he got kicked out at the age of 63, and my uncle Barney had died at the age of 63, and the priest that was after him was Father Paul, and he died at the age of 63, and he was a Jesuit, and he died 6 months and 3 days after the Jesuit anniversary on the Jesuit residence at Creighton in a bathtub, supposedly, and his name equaled 63, and I started thinking about all the other priests in my town, and as a kid, and one of them died on the 63rd day of the year, and another one's name equaled 63, and I was like, that's some crazy stuff. They all have this connection to 63, and my grandma died 63 days after what would have been my Uncle Barney's birthday. I also pointed out that year that how I thought my grandpa on my dad's side would die when my dad turned 63, and he just so happened to die on 3/10 of the year 2020, right when coronavirus was getting huge. And my dad turned 63 a month later, but my grandpa died 201 days before the Jesuit anniversary, and my Aunt Lorraine also died in 2020, and her name equaled 201, and she died all synced up to Kobe Bryant. And my Uncle Barney's wife ended up dying on 2/5, and that was synced up to Kobe Bryant, and there's a whole lot that is going on with this. But another thing, too, in regards to the Eagles, so my grandma dies just before the Eagles win the Super Bowl then, and my Uncle Clancy, who was there, just on right around Christmas, his lung just out of nowhere collapsed. Hit my Uncle Clancy. He was a pretty healthy guy, like nothing wrong with him. At my grandma's funeral, I think I drank like 40 beers with him, like he wasn't like in terrible health. He didn't have cancer or anything, but on Christmas, his lung just collapsed, and then he ended up dying after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, just like 72 days after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I think it was. My uncle died, right? And it was all connected to the number 624. He died 6 months and 24 days after my birthday, and my son just so happened to be born on January 17th that year, which was 6 months and 24 days after the date 624, and I talked about how that was synced up to the Cleveland Indians and Rocky Colavito and stuff, but maybe I'll explain more of this in a minute. But I'm just pointing out, Clancy died. So my sister owned Eagle Acres, and I was on Eagle Street, and my Uncle Clancy's son was the only Eagles fan I know. And I'm thinking about the Eagles for the next season. My grandma ends up dying. Then my Uncle Clancy dies after the Eagles win the Super Bowl. And the day of the Super Bowl, there was a commercial that was on the Super Bowl it was about the town Audubon, Iowa, where my sister lives. And they have a giant bull statue named Albert. And they literally had a commercial in the Super Bowl that year. And the joke was that they have the Super Bowl and it's the Super Bowl, right? And when I found out about this just a couple weeks before the Super Bowl, I looked up the town Audubon, Iowa, and let's just look it up really quick. Audubon, Iowa. And it was named after this guy, John James Audubon. And he's famous for writing the book called The Birds of America. And think about what the bird of America is. It's the eagle. And he also died at the age of 65, and Philadelphia equals 65. And Philadelphia was founded on the day leaving 65 days of the year. And, so what are the odds of that? The town that my sister lives in, they aired a Super Bowl commercial the year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. My sister owns a company called Eagle Acres. And even more so after this, 42 days after the Super Bowl, a young girl from that town died. And she died all by the numbers. She fell into a river, the Big Sioux River. And if you look up the last person who died in that same spot by drowning, it was a guy named Lyle Eagletail. So it's like, what are the odds of these things happening? There was also a whole bunch of other interesting things with that, such as my neighbor who died. He was like the biggest Cubs fan I know, right? Chicago Cubs. And he dies after the Chicago Cubs win the World Series. And my Uncle Barney was also a big Chicago Cubs fan. And my Uncle Barney died on January 14th, right? A lot like 114. And if you go back to what I was talking about that year, leading up to me thinking the Indians and the Cubs are going to play in the World Series, a big piece was that there was the Hoboken train wreck in September, and on that same day the Cubs tied, and the word tie equaled 114, and they said 114 people were injured in that Hoboken train wreck, and Hoboken, New Jersey is where the first baseball game was played, so I knew it was connected to baseball. And then the Cubs went on to win the World Series, getting their 114th win of the season, and a whole lot more. The last time that there was a tie in baseball was in 2005 when the Houston Astros tied the Cincinnati Reds 114 days before the World Series, and then the Astros lost to the Chicago White Sox that year. But what was so interesting is I later learned on my Uncle Barney's obituary, he talked about how he went to a Chicago Cubs game for his wedding anniversary with his wife, and he just so happened to go in the year 2005 when the Cubs lost to the Cincinnati Reds, and it was on 8-8 even, and, curse of the Billy Goat equaled 88. And the Cubs broke the curse of the Billy Goat that year. But, my Uncle Barney went to a game that same year, and the Cubs lost to the Cincinnati Reds, the same team that the Houston Astros had tied and so on. And then my uncle dies on January 14th, 114. And my neighbor who died after that, the girl who moved in after he died was a girl I graduated with, and her birthday is November 4th, 11/4, 114. But anyway, my neighbor and my grandma were both born in the year 34, and they were born 56 days apart, and they died 56 days apart. And if you read out the word 34 as words, it equals 56. And my neighbor, I've only known him as the word Bump. I didn't even know what his real name was, honestly, until he died and I saw his obituary. But I've always called him Bump my whole life. Bump equals 56. And what we called my grandma was Grandma Ellie. Grandma Ellie equals 56. And then they died 56 days apart. They were born in the same year, 56 days apart. Think about that in regards to the Jesuit stuff, too. And if you go back and look at all the stuff I talked about with them, they were all synced up to the Jesuits. And that Father Paul stuff, Father Paul he was a priest at the reservation in Rosebud, Oregon, or Rosebud, South Dakota, for a number of years. That was a big thing about his life, and that's where Bob Barker was from, the guy from The Price is Right. And remember, on the Jesuit anniversary that year, I got a phone call from Las Vegas, and I was watching that day like crazy. And then the day before the Las Vegas shooting, the guy who got the perfect showcase on The Price is Right, Terry Neese, reached out to me and wanted me to get a hold of him because of his experience on The Price is Right and so on. And he was from Las Vegas. Even when he was on the show, he was wearing a shirt that said Las Vegas. And the very next day, we got the Las Vegas attack, right, with Jason Aldean, and Jason Aldean equals 201. And I talked about how my grandma was originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee, but on her obituary, it said she was from Flintstone, Georgia, which is just outside of Chattanooga. And think about my Uncle Barney, who was married to Betty, and they had a Flintstone wedding and everything, was all about the Flintstones. And then I find out my grandma, who dies after him, is from Flintstone, Georgia. But anyway, I also talked about that year how I thought Ralphie May, the fat comedian, would possibly die. And Ralphie May did die, and he died in Las Vegas just after the Las Vegas shooting. And when you look up Ralphie May, he's also from Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, in Chattanooga, Tennessee equals 211 in gematria. And remember how I had that experience at my grandma's on the date 211, and my grandma's name equals 211. And I just discovered the other day that my cousin Ryan, his name equals 211 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. My uncle Clancy's name equals 211. My neighbor Bump died 2 months and 11 days after my grandma's birthday on the 211th day of the year, and he died at a place that equals 211. I mean, it's craziness. My uncle Clancy, too, he also died 205 days after my grandma, and in Jewish gematria, Philadelphia equals 205. So, it's craziness. And what's interesting in regards to the Jesuits, too? I swear, all of my relatives have died by the connections to the Jesuits in recent years. My uncle Kelly was the first of my mom's siblings to die, and he died on October 15th of 2013, and it was 191 days after his birthday, right? 191 days, if you're at Society of Jesus, it equals 191, right? And he just so happened, my uncle Barney met Pope Benedict in 2005 or whatever year he came to the Washington. My uncle Barney went and watched him, and he got something blessed by him. And he made sure that my Uncle Kelly had a Catholic funeral, even though I don't think my Uncle Kelly even really went to church. He made sure that he had a Catholic funeral, and he buried him with some emblem that was blessed by Pope Benedict. And I always thought that was strange. And I didn't even know Barney was a Knight of Columbus back then or anything, right? And Barney also was he was a Knight of Columbus. Knights of Columbus equals 71, and Barney died 71 days before the Knight of Columbus anniversary. And the word Catholic equals 71. And his father, my grandpa, who I never met, was born on 10/12, which is the day Christopher Columbus discovered America, supposedly in history. And my grandpa died 71 days after his birthday on 12/21 of 1980. And of course, too, look at this, Eugene Murphy. That was my grandpa's name, 166. Remember how my Uncle Barney equaled 166? Look at my Uncle Kelly, 166. I mean, it's craziness. And the next uncle to die on that side was my Uncle Mike Murphy. And look at his name in Francis Bacon, 191. He died 139 days before the Jesuit anniversary. And this sticks out even more so because he died on the same day as the Philadelphia train wreck, which is the 132nd day of 2015. Remember, Catholic Church equals 132. Roman Catholic, United States. I think it's United States. Yeah. Or the United States, maybe? I can't remember. United States of America, maybe. Yeah, United States of America, and then England equals 132 as well. So, I mean, he died of cancer too, and cancer equals 132. And I'm pretty sure he didn't get murdered. Pretty sure my grandma didn't get murdered, which leads me to believe that somehow somehow these things are just manifesting this way, right? I hope that makes sense, but it's like that Philadelphia train wreck that same day that my Uncle Mike died was super important to Pope Francis's visit to Philadelphia. And then think about how my grandma and my Uncle Clancy were synced up to Philadelphia. I mean, I don't know. There's something interesting about how that syncs up, right? And I don't know. But then my grandpa this year dies 201 days for the Jesuit anniversary. My Aunt Lorraine's name equals 201, and she died on the 113th day of the year, and her birthday was 11/3, and her name equaled 823 in Jewish, like Kobe Bryant's birthday, and a whole lot more. And she died, I can't remember it all, and when Betty died, it was right around the time of the Super Bowl that they kept saying that the season 10, episode 12 was the San Francisco 49ers, right? But it's actually the Atlanta Falcons, and it's the same episode I was talking about with my Uncle Barney. And they were saying the Simpsons predicted the 49ers to win the Super Bowl that year. All these people in the conspiracy community or whatever you call it. And I was pointing out, I was saying, hey, no, look, this is the same episode with my uncle dying. And, my Aunt Lorraine was a huge Chiefs fan too. What are the odds? She dies after the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. And when my Aunt Betty died, I pointed out how I thought my Aunt Lorraine was going to die synced up to Kobe Bryant. And then she dies on the 113th day of the year. It's Kobe Bryant equals 113 and so on. So, but anyway, it's funny in regards to 211 too. So the whole point I was even making of this, I really wanted to start this video out, but I just got on a rant because I just want to prove a point that, like, it's not just I don't think it's just some evil cabal that is doing this. Somehow these things are happening and they're somehow connected to it. And maybe it is the cabal that's doing all of this, but the thing is that these things have been happening well before I knew any of this knowledge, But even my first ever YouTube video, let's just go through all this really quick. The first ever YouTube video I put out was way before I knew gematria or anything, and it was a song, some crappy song that I put out, and I just made I don't even remember. I got like Windows Movie Maker for the first time on a computer, and I just made some stupid drawings and tried to make them like animating a music video for it. And back in the day, I didn't know how to record anything. I recorded the drums separate, and I suck at drums, but I couldn't find a drummer, so I just played the drums, and then the timing's all off and everything. And I used one microphone to record everything, but look at my oldest video on YouTube. It's called Tasteless, and I swear to God, if you go watch this video, the main line in the song is that I say ABCs never meant much to me. 1, 2, 3, I can't counterfeit, right? I'm singing about numbers and letters in this video, the very first one I ever put out. And I can't even remember what it is. I know I put it out by the numbers. I think I put it out 21 days after my birthday. And does tasteless equal 21? Tasteless equals 21. I put it out 21 days after my birthday, and so on. So, it's just like, what are the odds of this? It's like all of this was meant to happen, it seems. And, you think that a lot of this knowledge is hidden, but really, in a way, it's like you can find all of this stuff that we're talking about. You can find stuff about Kabbalah. You can find things about gematria. You can find things about synchronicity. You can find things about astrology. It's all out there if you know where to look and you are asking the questions to look for the answers, These things are out there. They're basically hidden in plain sight because what the cabal has done is they've created a world where people don't want this knowledge. People don't ask these questions, So, it's not, so they can easily put things in movies and they can put real information out there, but most people aren't going to find it because they're never going to be looking for it because it's kind of how they rule the world, I feel like, is that it's not that the knowledge isn't there, it's just that they've trained people to not want the knowledge. But it just blew my mind when I noticed this a few years back. I was like, what are the odds of this? And, the song wasn't necessarily about gematria, but, just for me to even use ABC 1, 2, 3, and the whole point of it was just like that people don't have any taste in this world. I say like, when will you come and see? When will you come and hear and smell and whatever? But I leave out taste because, I feel like the whole world is just, people don't think for themselves. They don't have their own taste. They don't put their own spin on things. They don't try to understand the world. And that's what I was trying to do back then and still trying to do. And, people are just tasteless, I guess. That's the whole point of the song. But anyway, let's look at this. So on 2/11 this year, I was at work and, dude, I swear to God, I have no idea why I was singing the Hokey Pokey. And I still don't know why. The song came in my head. singing about it, and the girl that was working up front was like, "Why are you singing the Hokey Pokey?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know why I'm singing the Hokey Pokey." But right after that, I started thinking about, being a kid and going to like family events, and I don't know, doing the Hokey Pokey for the DJ or the band or whatever. And because my family is huge. My dad had 11 brothers and sisters, and my mom had 8 brothers and sisters. And like when we have we had a lot of family gatherings and things like that. And my grandma's uncles were in a polka band and all kinds of stuff. And I just remember going to a lot of these events when I was a kid, and we'd dance and whatever, do the Hokey Pokey. And oftentimes when that happened, I would stay at my cousin Jacob's house with my uncle Freddie. And my uncle Freddie's this cool, he's always been one of the cooler uncles, I always feel like. No offense to my other uncles, but he's a guy, he likes partying a lot. And when I got older, I used to party with him. He's kind of the black sheep, and he's still like has his head on straight, but he likes to get pretty fucked up and drink a lot and whatever. And I guess I don't know. I just remember he was always fun when we were a kid. He let us do things that a lot of the other adults wouldn't let us do, and so on. But I started thinking about him, and right as I started thinking about him and this whatever, I walk around the corner, and I hear this guy say, "Brr, it's cold out." And I look up, and it's my Uncle Freddie. And then he starts talking to me or whatever, and I'm like, what are the odds of this? So I figured I'd look up my Uncle Freddie and see why. And I remembered that his birthday was August 10th because um, a few years back I talked about Trevor Bauer and finger symbolism and how it was synced up to my Uncle Freddie. In the movie Freddie Got Fingered with Tom Green, because my Uncle Freddie, when he was younger, he lost some of his fingers, and his nickname has been Fred Fingers or Freddie Fingers for, the longest time. And I had just documented about how Trevor Bauer went to the Dodgers all by the numbers, and, Trevor Bauer injured his finger with a drone in the 2016 Major League Baseball playoffs, and a whole lot more. I'll explain a little bit about it, but look at my Uncle Fred here. His birthday was August 10th, 1958, and this experience happened 6 months and 2 days after his birthday, and he turned 62. So I have this synchronicity with my Uncle Freddie 62 days after his 62nd birthday, and his name equals 62. What are the odds of that? But did the cabal do this? I don't think that the cabal did this, right? This is just something that happened. It's an organic thing, but these things happen. If you saw the amount of things that I document about, or these times these happen to me, they happen all of the time, every single day. And, I just think a lot of people aren't paying enough attention. And that's, I guess, the point of this video, is that maybe hopefully more people will start, instead of focusing and, I could say, oh, the word sacrifice equals 62. Now my uncle's going to be sacrificed or something. I'm not going to do stuff like that, because that doesn't make sense to do, right? Sacrifice 62? Possibly. But, that doesn't mean that he's going to be sacrificed. Or if this was a media story and somebody died, why would... I don't see the point of writing the word sacrifice, because you don't know for sure that that's what happened. You can think that possibly happened, but you don't know exactly that. If Michael Freddy dies, it could be a sacrifice, or it could just be because of this code. Like, it might be because of something else that equals 62, or because his name equals 62 and he died at the age of 62, right? Hopefully he doesn't die. I'm not trying to jinx him or manifest anything, but it's like, I'm just making the point that you don't, like, a lot of people just, they're taking certain words and they're making them fit a narrative because that's what they believe is going on. And they don't know for absolute sure that that is what is going on. And I hope that makes sense. There are times where it makes complete sense, right? Especially, when you think about murder by numbers and so on, and it just perfectly aligns. You see a lot of people dying by these same numbers and so on. And there is a pattern that exists. I get that. But there's other times where people are literally taking this word and just placing it for no reason because they don't know what else to write. And I don't like it when people do that, because it's it's not accurate, It is truly cherry picking, so. But anyway, like I said, I documented about my Uncle Freddie, like way back when, 2018, in regards to Trevor Bauer and this finger symbolism. And what's so funny about it is, in regards to this Jesuit narrative, and once again, this is another reason why I know there's somebody or something that is manipulating these things and to make me understand these. But if you go back to 2016, I had this video where I talked about Terry Francona flipping the bird and Trevor Bauer injuring his finger, and I had a clip of Terry Francona, the Indians coach, flipping the bird. And a few days later, YouTube took the thumbnail and changed it, and they put the picture of the priest who supposedly molested me as a kid in it. And there's no reason. I did not put this picture there. It was originally a picture of Terry Francona. And I always was like, why in the world would they do that? And they took it off of this video right here. I put this video out of a song where I wrote about priest molested kid, and I used this picture, and I put it on February 7th of 2015, and then in October 23rd of 2016, they changed that thumbnail to that picture. And it really makes no sense, but I later noticed it was 624 days. And this is a big number with the Cleveland Indians and the curse of Rocky Colavito, and Rocky Colavito equals 624, and he got traded to the Detroit Tigers. Detroit Tigers equals 624, and Aroldis Chapman equals 624, and he was born on the same day Harvey Keene died in 1988, which is also the same day that and Harvey Keene was the guy who Rocky Colavito got traded for, and Freemasonry is founded on 624. Modern Freemasonry, at least. And, it's just funny that they would do that. 624 days later. Trevor Bauer's birthday is January 17th, which is 6 months and 24 days after the date 624. My, Rocky Colavito's birthday is also 8/10, right? Which is the same day as my Uncle Freddie's birthday, August 10th. And my January 17th is 6 months and 24 days before August 10th even. Right? So Trevor Bauer and my Uncle Freddie's birthdays are 6 months and 24 days apart. And my grandma also died 8 months and 10 days after my Uncle Clancy. Or my Uncle Barney. And then my Uncle Clancy died after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And he died 6 months and 24 days after, or before my birthday, and 6 months and 24 days after my grandma died. Right? So there's this humongous weird number, and it's synced up to this. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me that Trevor Bauer goes to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and then I have this synchronicity with my Uncle Freddie, just afterwards. So I know there's something important to this narrative to pay attention to. And what's even funnier is, like, just the day before this happened, Larry Flint died. And if you go back to my old information about Larry Flint from from 2017, the same year that my grandma died, and the same year my Uncle Barney died, I also talked about my Uncle Eddie Murphy, because I thought that Larry Flint would possibly die, and then we got the death of Hugh Hefner instead on the Jesuit anniversary. But my Uncle Eddie actually won a trip out of Hustler magazine, and he got to go stay at the Bunny Ranch in Las Vegas. It was the same one owned by the one where Lamar Odom got drugged or almost died or whatever, right? And think about Eddie Murphy, right? The actor Eddie Murphy. Just after I documented about my uncle being in Hustler magazine, it was Eddie Murphy's brother Charlie Murphy died. I remember too. It was just 4 or 5 days later, Charlie Murphy died right after I documented about my uncle Eddie Murphy and how he was synced up to Hustler magazine and all that. And just think about it. Ed Murphy, my Uncle Ed. I document about my Uncle Ed, and then the very next day I have synchronicity with my Uncle Fred and Ed. Like, I don't know, there's something crazy to it, but Look at that. My Uncle Eddie, or Edward, whatever, his birthday is 168 days before Larry Flint died, and his name equals 168. All kinds of other stuff here, but they have a story about Stormy Daniels under Larry Flint after dying age 78. Stormy Daniels equals 78. Jesuit 78. He was paralyzed in the year 78. Lamar Joseph Odom equals 78. Hustler equals 41. Hustler Magazine 179. The 41st prime number. I don't know. You know what's funny is like my Uncle Ed, he's a lot like my Uncle Fred on the other side too. He's like kind of the black sheep of the family, likes to party a lot. I mean, what kind of guy wins a thing out of Hustler magazine and he brought like his robe and all kinds of crap to Christmas one year is hilarious to me, but he the article's ridiculous too. It even shows his wiener and like I gotta see my uncle's wiener, like yay, but uh it's a hilarious article. He's like, I wanted to tell him no pictures, but I had my mouth full of pussy or something. I was just like, oh my god, dude. But yeah, if you ever want to look at my uncle's cock, get the August 2011 issue of Hustler, and he is in there. Anyway, let's move on to another thing that happened on 210, the same day I had synchronicity with my Uncle Fred. So earlier in the day, I noticed that Zach had re-uploaded his interview with the Kansas City Chiefs player Larry Johnson. And I don't know what it was, an hour or so later, I got this message on Facebook from this guy. And I do know this guy, but I mean, I don't know him that well. And I figured his Facebook got hacked, but at the same time, a lot of people asked me to DJ and stuff through Facebook. So I was like, I better just say something back, right? And I did. And it ended up that it was just a hacked deal, but you know, it's interesting. I noticed Zach re-uploaded his video with Larry Johnson and so on, and after this happened, I figured, I'd look up this guy's name, and his name just so happened to equal all the same things as Charles Manson. 261, 416, 194, 209, right? And the Francis Bacon ciphers. Look at Charles Manson, something I documented about a major theme back in the fall or basically over the summer. But the reason this sticks out with Larry Johnson is because a long time ago, when Larry Johnson started sharing gematria, I also pointed out that Larry Johnson's birthday just so happens to be November 19th, which is the same day that Charles Manson died in 2017. So I thought these two things were probably somehow related. And, you look up Lindell Woodle and his birthday just happens to be 1229, which is the 201st prime number, and a whole lot more here. But remember Larry Johnson, too. He started sharing, in regards to the 201, the 201st prime, Larry Johnson started sharing gematria on a YouTube video, and he did that on 10/18/2019, which is the same day as event 201, right? And then Super Bowl 55 this year was 201 days after Zach's birthday. The same day that Zach got a YouTube strike on his channel, it was 201 days later. And just think about that. So they strike his channel 201 days after his birthday. He's talking about the number 201, important to the Jesuits, for the entire year of 2020, pretty much. His name, Zachary Keith Hubbard, equals 170. Tampa Bay Buccaneers equal 170. Tom Brady equals 170. Speaking of this too, just to stay on this topic here, Zach, in January, Zach talked about how all these people talk about how he says his sweet lady equals 33, right? No big deal. But Zach made a video talking about how the reason he calls her Sweet Lady is from the Tyrese song called Sweet Lady. And he also points out that she's from Burma, which was, formerly, that's what Myanmar was called, right? So his girlfriend is from Myanmar. And then a few days later, the big thing in the news is that there's a coup in Myanmar. And that coup just so happened to happen 170 days before Zach's birthday, right? 170 days, his name equals 170. The lady that got overthrown, her birthday, if it'll pop up here, but her birthday is June 19th, and June 19th is the 170th day of the year. What are the odds of that, right? Zach's name 170, the coup comes 170 days before his birthday, and the coup is of this lady who's born on the 170th day of the year. Then, Zach's channel gets a strike 201 days after his birthday. And when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who equal 170, go on and win the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady, the GOAT, and so on, Tom Brady equals 170 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. We need to pay attention to the things that are going on in our lives because they are synced up to these other things. And I don't know enough about Zach's girlfriend to even compare it to her. I don't know what her real name is. I don't know when her birthday is or anything, right? I don't know anything else about her other than he calls her sweet lady, so if he would look at it, I guarantee there is some type of connection to her. That, he talks about Myanmar and how a sweet lady is from there. And then a few days later, the story in the news is about Myanmar and the coup, right? And I'm absolutely positive that it's synced up to his girlfriend somehow. Notice too, Zach also re-uploaded this exactly 55 weeks after the interview with Larry Johnson. And he uploaded it due to Super Bowl 55 and so on, right? And once again, I'm not calling him out or anything. That's why I've showed all these other things in my own life and so on and how they sync up. It doesn't mean that he's an agent or anything else. What I am simply doing is showing that these things happen all of the time, everywhere. And if you pay enough attention, and everybody knows their own life better than anyone else, right? So we need to share this other side. It needs to be paid more attention to, is all, because we're not going to find out the real truth of a lot of these things, and if we don't understand this whole other side that is existing, that I'm pointing out all of the time, that seems to be getting ignored, I feel like. And it's not purposely getting ignored, but at the same time, it needs to be paid attention to. And, case in point, like, let me find it here. The Andy No stuff, right? Remember Zach was talking about Andy No? So Zach went to Portland on January 16th, and then he got bear sprayed in the face at Powell's bookstore because of Antifa and so on, right? And, that happened to be 186 days before his birthday. And for a long time, I've talked about this connection with Zach and 186. Zach Hubbard equals 186. In his book, he even says that's what most people called him through his life, Zach Hubbard. And it's all synced up to Elon Musk and the date 6/28, the day that his first channel was deleted, which was on the day leaving 186 days in the year and 186 days after his house got crashed into, and after Monograph made the video talking about how we should watch out on Christmas Eve and so on. But it's also interesting, because Portland equals 116 and 100, and he went there on 116, and then his full name also equals 100, right? So what are the odds he would go there on January 16th? He's also from there, and his name equals the same as there. And then, he goes there on a date, syncing up to that. And, let's see here. I'm trying to see what else I put in here. But, then later on, so there's a video that Andy No posted on his channel that shows where Zach got bear sprayed in the face, right? And whatever, the little riff or whatever was going on. But then Zach made a video talking about Andy No's book and how everything was about the number 33, right? Andy No was releasing his book on the 33rd day of the year, and Powell's equal 33. And the day that he noticed that Antifa was gonna be at Powell's bookstore, it was also on a date numerology of 33. He points out the word federal equals 33. And Oregon's also the 33rd state, right? And he makes it seem like, oh, Andy No, he's probably part of the cabal, right? And, how do we distinguish this? Because Zach's book released on October 13th, which The book is all about the Jesuits, and it involves the Knights Templar and so on. And October 13th just so happens to be the same day that the Knights Templar were wiped out in history in France on Friday the 13th. That was October 13th, the same day Zach's book released. And that's also the same day that Pope Paul, the guy who recognized the Jesuits, Pope Paul III, he just so happened to become the Pope on that day too. So the Pope who recognizes the Jesuits, his papacy began on October 13th, and then Zach's book comes out October 13th. It comes out 84 days after Zach's birthday. The word Jesuit equals 84. He got that weird message from, what was it, Pittsburgh, California, 56 days after his birthday about how it was like the 56th highest ranked book or something of the sort, you know? And yeah, I mean, yeah, he didn't make his book come out on this day on purpose, right? Amazon chose that date, right? But when you come back here and look at Andy No's stuff, and it's all about 33, Zach just so happened to go to, let me find it here. He just so happened to go there 3 months and 3 days after his book came out. Let me point it out really quick. 10/13/2020 to 1/16/2021. My fast old internet here. Well, my internet went out. I don't know. It's snowing like crazy out right now, so maybe who knows, but you can just think about it in your head, right? October 13th, November 13th, you know, December 13th, January, that's 3 months, and then you add 3 days. 3 months and 3 days, right? So he's talking about all these 33s, and he goes to a bookstore, of all things, right? A bookstore. 3 months and 3 days after Zach's book is released on Amazon, and he's out there passing out his book at the bookstore, you know, trying to get people to understand that Antifa is all just a rigged, planned thing, right? Which I totally agree with, but it's also interesting that it was on the 16th day of the year, and forever we pointed out that if you write out the word 16, 16 equals 33. And even more interesting, if you write out the word book, book equals 16. So Zach goes on the 16th day of the year to a bookstore and gets bear sprayed in the face. The word 16 equals 33. It was 3 months and 3 days after his book was released. And not to mention, him and Andy No's books were released exactly 16 weeks apart, right? The word book, 16, he goes there on the 16th day. I mean, how do we distinguish that Andy No is a bad person and Zach isn't a bad person? You know, Andy No has been on CNN and so on, so I get the whole gist of it. But it's like the numbers align exactly the same. So how do we distinguish, you know, what's bad, what's good, and so on, right? These are the questions that I've had forever, because I've seen multiple sides of this, and you know, just because it's a 33 doesn't mean that Andy No is a bad person. And does Andy No truly know that, you know, his book was released all by this code? Possibly, you know, but the same thing happened to Zach too. So then you go, huh, you know, how is this being done, or like, you know, what is going on with it? Also, I've talked a lot about the Francis Bacon ciphers recently. Antifa equals 137 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. Point it out really quick. Antifa 137. That's the 33rd prime number. Also, he was on the Joe Rogan show, right? Joe Rogan in the Francis Bacon ciphers equal 137. And Andy No was on the Joe Rogan show 33 days before Joe Rogan's birthday, right? Here it is, July 10th. Span of 33 days before Joe Rogan's birthday. Joe Rogan equals 137, the 33rd prime number. And then Zach made another video. Zach made that other video talking about Andy No and 33 on January 26th. And in the Francis Bacon ciphers, Portland equals 126, like January 26th. Portland Trailblazers equal 126. Remember, Kobe Bryant died on 126, and then the next game the Lakers played was against the Portland Trailblazers, and then a whole lot more, you know. They were the first team they played in the playoffs, and, you know, perfect for Portland. What did I write in here? I just want to read it. I really don't think Zach is an agent either, but I'm not paying attention. It makes him look guilty. and I don't think he did any of this on purpose. He's just whatever. But what if whatever the cabal changes is supposed to happen, just as everything in our lives are supposed to happen too, right? Because we live in a world that is just, they're surrounded by patterns that happen every single day. And it seems that everything that we do is already all mapped out and already planned. The more and more I study this. And then you start going, man, maybe the cabal, when they changed something, that was part of the actual plan that exists in this world, right? And for me to notice it was part of this plan, right? We're all like, it doesn't matter what we do in this world, which is just a crazy, a fearsome thing to really think about, that everything in the world is, even when the cabal codes something, that was supposed to happen, right? Like that's the overall, I don't know. It's just a thought. I don't know if that's true or what, but it's something to think about. How do we beat something like this without paying attention to our actions and how our own lives are coded too, right? And I've said this a billion times. Like, to me, the biggest problem is that the world exists this way. It's not necessarily that people are using it to rule the world. It's that the world actually exists this way, and this system actually needs to be taken down or understood better, and understood why the world works this way and so on. And I mean, yeah, I don't want to be ruled over, but at the same time, like, we don't know enough about what is going on in this world to really change anything. So, I don't know. Just pointing this stuff out, because it needs to be pointed out. And like, most people won't do it, or they're not noticing it. But Zach releases his book exactly by the same numbers that Andy No releases his book, and then we're supposed to think Andy No's a bad person, but we're not supposed to think Zach's a bad person. And I don't think he is, but once again, that brings up that question. I know I'm rambling and whatever, but it's one of the biggest questions I've had in regards to this knowledge since, you know, since really understanding all of this. Even look at like Larry Johnson. Remember the interview with Larry Johnson? So Zach reached out to Larry for how long, and then Larry finally comes on the gematria effect on January 22nd of 2020. And this just really stuck out to me, for one, because San Francisco equals 122 and Kansas City equals 122, and it was just before the Kansas City Chiefs beat the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl. It was also 64 days after Larry Johnson's birthday, and Kansas City Chiefs equals 64, 49ers equals 64. Zach and Larry's birthdays are a span of 122 days apart. Larry also shared gematria on 10/18, the same day as event 201. That was 32 days, or 1 month and 11 days before his birthday. And Chiefs equal 32 and 31, and the 11th prime number is 31, right? So syncs up perfectly. And then the Chiefs end up winning Super Bowl 54 by 11 points, and they scored 31 points, right? And Zach's interview with Larry Johnson, the former Chief, was 11 days before Super Bowl 54. I mean, just perfectly synced up, right? Larry Johnson comes on his show and whatever. Yeah. Listening to it too, Larry doesn't even seem like he even knows half the stuff that Zach knows or talks about. And maybe he does, and maybe that's all part of the act or something. But just listening to it, he seems like he's not even, you know, close to at the same level of understanding or something to me, just by listening to it. But I'm leaving some of this stuff out because it's just so much more I had to re-explain about the number 19 and whatever. But no, Zach also re-uploaded that video on the 41st day of the year, and it was because of the Super Bowl that equals 41. And Larry Johnson's currently 41 years old. And to top it all off, too, in regards to the Charles Manson connection, it was 282 days before Larry Johnson's birthday. And remember, Charles Manson equals 282, and that hacked Facebook comment, the guy's name Lindell Woodle, equals 282, right? And he'll be 42 this year, 42 in black people. It was also 83 days after Larry Johnson's 41st birthday, and football equals 83, and Tom Brady's birthday is 8-3. Notice it's also 2 months and 22 days after Larry Johnson's birthday. Remember last year the Chiefs, they was all synced up to the number 222 and Andy Reid and so on, right? 222. The Super Bowl was on 2-2 of the year 22 or 2-2 of 2020. Super Bowl 56, according to coronavirus, will be held in the Rams Stadium in 2022 as well. I've talked about how the Rams are synced up to the Chiefs through a Mormon theme that syncs up to Moses and a whole lot more. But there was another thing I wanted to show about Zach in this, and it might not even necessarily happen, but it's just a pattern that I've noticed with. Well, it wasn't just me. Bobby was pointing it out too. Bobby pointed it out to me, and then I did a whole bunch of research into it, but it has to do with St. Patrick's Day. Oh, my internet ain't working. Oh, man, hold on. Well, I don't think my internet's going to come back up for a while, but I can remember a whole lot of what's going on here, but I've recently talked a whole lot about the number 218 and how there's a super important number to a whole bunch of stuff that's going on in the truth community and just a whole bunch of stuff in general connected to the moon. And what Bobby pointed out to me was that if Zach doesn't miss a gematria effect on St. Patrick's Day this year, 317, he will be doing his 218th episode of the gematria effect. And the date 317 is an interesting day because Zach's first ever gematria effect was on 9/7 of 2016, and that just so happened to be 317 days before his birthday. And it was also 3 months and 17 days before the car crashed into his house on Christmas Eve, right? 317. And if you write out Zachary Hubbard, it equals 66, which is that 66 prime number is 317. And what's even more interesting is that 317 is 126 days before Zach's birthday this year, right? Or every year. 317, 126 days. Think about Ireland in regards to St. Patrick's Day. Ireland equals 126, and Joe Biden equals 126. But notice how Joe Biden also equals 152, and how Ireland equals 152, and the gematria effect also equals 152. Also, if you write out St. Patrick, I think it is. St. Patrick equals 126. It's an interesting thing the way it syncs up. And trying to think what else it was. 317 is also Joe Biden's 56th day as being the president, right? Think about that in relation to coronavirus and this big number with the Jesuits and so on. And the reason that's even more important is because if you go from September 11th, which is really important, to 218 to 317, it's 6 months and 6 days, right? 66. Once again, synced up to the number 317. It's also 187 days, I believe, and think about that in regards to the Society of Jesus and the Jesuits and, a number of other things. And remember last year, too, in regards to 126 and St. Patrick's Day and, Ireland equaling 126. Remember Conor McGregor's uncle died. His name was Black Mamba. He died on St. Patrick's Day. Remember how, Kobe Bryant also had the nickname Black Mamba, Kobe Bryant. He died on January 26th. Also, the RV bombing is really important to the truth community. I'll leave a link to that video in the description. But, and Zach did the interview with RV Truth and a bunch of things. And it was synced up to Bobby Simpson as well. And, the Batman building and a whole lot more. But, all of that stuff was important to 9/11. That's another reason why I measured from 9/11, right? From 9/11 to 317. And that RV bombing, some people believed that it was the Irish Republic Army because he put a timer on that bomb. And, they did that a lot. And the Irish Republic Army, they put timers on there to warn civilians to get away before it blows something up so they don't kill a bunch of people not involved and so on, right? So people compared it to that, right? Think about Ireland and the Irish Republic Army. And once again, remember the song Zombie by the Cranberries is about the Warrington bombings that happened on 2/26 of 93, which was the same day that the World Trade Center also had the bombing, right, in 1993. So there's something related there. So I'm just curious, and maybe it won't even sync up, but it's just an interesting pattern how the number 317 syncs up to, the gematria effect, and then the 218th episode could possibly be on the date 317, which is St. Patrick's Day, and so on. So I don't know. Just trying to piece it out, but there's definitely something synced up to it. And who knows? Maybe Zach will miss a show and then it won't be on that same day or whatever, but, an interesting pattern. Just trying to think. Like, and Boston seems really important too, to St. Patty's Day. And let's see if I can spell it right. But Boston, Massachusetts equals 260, so does Nashville, Tennessee. So, and it was that Nashville RV bombing was 260 days before 9/11. Boston, Massachusetts also equals 312, which is another big number I talked about in 2017, synced up to the Jesuits, and Pope Francis's real name equals 312, and, Ignatius of Loyola was made a saint on the date 312, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I feel like there was some other things I was wanted to talk about in this video. I really just want to show all these synchronicities with Zach, or these things going on with Zach, and just make a point that, like, there's a lot of things that I'm confused about with gematria, and, I'm just trying to figure out how we can distinguish, you know, what is being done by the cabal and what is just happening naturally. And a lot of times it seems that these things in the media are not happening naturally, but then, I'm like, maybe it could be, and but then you see things like Beyonce releasing the clothing line Icy, whatever it was, Icy something, Icy Blue Icy or something like that. And right after, Houston is flooded or Houston is frozen over, and she's from Houston, and there's just so many things you're like, there's no way these are coincidences, and it's not people, you know, manipulating the way the world works, right? But when you really pay attention, you see this code everywhere. It's not just in the media, it's within your own life every single day, all day long. And I wish more people would try to decode it that way. Like, try to see how their life syncs up to these stories. Because I've been doing this for years, and, like, there's just been countless stories where my life is synced up to the media. I mean, just countless. I don't even want to go on a big old tangent, but talk about Denmark and how Denmark might be important. And then the next day, Donald Trump wants to buy Greenland from Denmark as the main story in the media. I mean, this stuff happens to me constantly, and I don't know why, you know. But whatever. I'm gonna leave it there since my internet keeps going out. I started making this video a few days ago, and then I had to stop too. So yeah, we'll just leave it there. Have a good one. Peace.